Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I friggin' told you guys, I told you not to panic. I told you it wasn't what the mainstream media was reporting. Remember a couple weeks back when they told you Donald Trump lost? They told you that the Alien Enemies Act was shut down by the Supreme Court in shocking ruling. All over social media, that's all you saw. A bunch of misleading headlines and leftist clowns misrepresenting the actual story, what the real story was. A temporary pause, SCOTUS didn't shut anything down, they were just hearing arguments after a lower court was blocking Donald Trump's use of the act. But the leftist activist, of course, didn't want you to know that. But I remember saying on that day, they're gonna look like absolute fools in a couple weeks, especially that little clown Harry Sisson. And well, would you look at that? What is it, 2 weeks later? Pretty much right on cue. The Supreme Court has now reaffirmed Donald Trump's authority to use this law. In other words, the deportation of MS-13 and TDA members is once again a go. And I said earlier that they reaffirmed it, and that's a purposeful use of that word. And that's why this decision really isn't so surprising at all, because they previously confirmed that Donald Trump was well within the Constitution and his presidential authority in his use of that law and his declaration of an emergency. And so here we go again, the left has egg on their faces, but we also got to talk about something else. I guess we could call it the extremely annoying asterisk around this, the continued disappointment of Trump-appointed Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, because guess what? Once again, she's decided to side with the left-wing judges dissenting in this Supreme Court decision. Yeah, I guess she's just really compassionate and concerned about the constitutional rights of foreign criminal invaders. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so yep, Donald Trump wins. The Supreme Court just handed him the green light to move forward with mass deportations of gang-linked illegal migrants under the Alien Enemies Act.
We're getting some breaking news at this hour coming out of the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court has handed President Trump a victory, letting him and his administration use the 1798 law that historically has been employed only in wartime to swiftly deport alleged Venezuelan gang members as part of the Republican president's hardline approach to immigration, granting that administration request to lift the Washington-based U.S. judge James Boasberg's March 15th order that had temporarily blocked the summary deportations under the Alien Enemies Act while litigation in the case continues.
Good. Enough with the frickin' nonsense. Enough with these sob stories and fake crocodile tears over these individuals. They're frickin' Tren de Aragua affiliated cartel-linked foreign nationals. And Trump is treating them like the national security and public security risk that they are. You know, as we've been saying, I've played clips to this effect how many times, the Maduro regime is legitimately emptying their prisons and sending gang members over en masse.
Do you believe that Venezuela sent TDA here to wreak havoc?
Yes.
Or they should think to just getting rid of them? Do you think this is a tactic?
No, it's a predatory incursion. They came to the United States. We know they're embedded through numerous investigations. They're embedded with the Maduro regime. They came here to unsettle this country, whether it's through the fentanyl that kills thousands of kids or violence in the city. I mean, the FBI just did a report saying that TDA members are here to assassinate people in Florida.
You may have seen recently an FBI assessment that was unclassified that said that the Maduro regime is using and planning to use Tren de Aragua terrorists to carry out assassination plots on American soil. This is a earth-shattering piece of news. The Biden administration imported the terrorist army that our own FBI assesses is planning assassination strikes on American soil against critics of the Maduro regime.
They're dumping literal gang member terrorists into the country. You know, people are wondering why Venezuela's crime rate is tanking just like El Salvador's. Well, it certainly isn't because they've got a CSOT prison. It certainly isn't because they're cracking down on their gangs and throwing them in prison. No, they're emptying their prisons, in fact, so they don't have to deal with the burden of feeding and dealing with these people, and they're sending them straight to the US-Mexico border, or putting them on ships and sending them straight to Miami. The idea that Donald Trump isn't justified in his declaration of an emergency is unreal. And you know, people say that the Alien Enemies Act isn't valid in this case. Well, now I guess the Supreme Court of the United States disagrees. He is absolutely valid in his authority to declare the emergency, to declare these people as a national security risk, and to use that law to get them the hell out of the freaking country. No more discussion. And all you leftoid dummies who jumped the gun when SCOTUS temporarily paused the enforcement, holy moly, do you look like absolute fools. Ooh, Trump defeated, Trump defeated. You guys were popping champagne all over social media, but here we are once again, and Trump was right, on the right side of the law. And he was also right in his deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Don't you find it also a little bit hilarious how leftists don't mention him anymore? What happened to all the El Salvador trips that they were planning? And isn't it interesting how in a couple headlines recently, he went from Maryland man to now El Salvador man? Yeah, I guess the evidence piled up to an extent where they couldn't push the lie anymore. So much for that being their key to the 2026 midterms. But anyways, enough dunking on the left. Now we gotta talk about our own problems. Because once again, Amy Coney Barrett sides with the frickin' lunatic leftists. Again. I don't know about you guys, and I'm sure Trump probably feels the exact same way, but I am beyond done with her. I'm beyond disappointed with this nominee. You know, she had her chance to make it right after her April disaster when she sided with the activist left, whining about due process for violent, criminal, illegal aliens. But instead of correcting herself, instead of realizing how frickin' dumb that stance is, she decides to double down. And now being the only conservative judge on the bench to stick by her decision on this ruling. A ruling that literally just enforces the law, protects the country, and does what is clearly common sense. You know, personally, I feel a little bit like an idiot, and I gotta take the L on this one because when she was being nominated, I was going through her track record and I was thinking she is a strong conservative hawk. This is gonna be a great pick. But boy, was I wrong, and you gotta give credit. I gotta give credit to people like Robert Barnes, who hit the nail on the head with this one. He tried to warn us.
I think Trump's only risk of not getting reelected is if he were to try to put Barrett on the bench. Barrett is not only the pro-lockdown choice, she's not only the deep state stealth choice as another coup attempt against the president. The same people who recommended to Trump to put Fauci in charge are the ones recommending Barrett for the Supreme Court. The same people who recommended Bolton to the National Security Council are recommending Barrett to the Supreme Court. The same people who recommended Chris Wray in charge of the FBI and Rod Rosenstein and Robert Mueller, the Department of Justice, are the same people pushing Barrett. And Barrett is the forced vaccination choice, the forced sterilization choice, the lockdown choice, the detention camp choice, the emergency exception to the Constitution choice, and the person who cannot be trusted or relied upon to defend the president on a key election lawsuit upcoming at the election. Donald Trump will win the vote in the election of the Electoral College. The question is, will that be affirmed and recognized when the Democrats try to steal it by using selective lawfare against it?
He said that she was a deep state plant, and you know, we didn't heed his warning, and now here we are. Another deep state plant made it through, and it's creating some difficulties for the Trump administration. You know, we can't really do much except for complain, unfortunately. It is a lifetime appointment, and Amy Coney Barrett is quite young, so I guess it's just one of those it is what it is moments, but it certainly is disappointing, although I guess you could look at the silver lining that it is better to have Amy Coney Barrett than an actual far-left extremist judge, and honestly, even without her, in these crucial decisions, Trump can still eke out these victories at a 5-4 majority. That is when the Bush-style judges get their frickin' act together. But anyways, I don't want to dwell too much on the negative. It just frickin' sucks. At least overall, it's a massive win. Stephen Miller is declaring it the biggest legal victory so far.
This was a huge, a monumental victory for President Trump. The biggest legal win of this administration so far. A total embarrassment for crazy Judge Boasberg, who's been trying to force this president to bring foreign alien terrorists back onto American soil, trying to turn our planes around, trying to empty prisons in foreign countries and bring them back to our soil. This is a monumental, colossal victory for the rule of law, for the Constitution, for our founding generation, John Adams, who signed this law into effect in 1798, and for President Trump in fulfilling his mandate and campaign pledge.
Let the deportations begin. Now I guess the Trump administration just has to figure out how to fix the rest of the problem, because of course the Alien Enemies Act only applies to a very specific illegal migrant. Now on to the next issue, probably the bigger issue, all the other illegals. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.